In this video, I would like to share my experiences as an English language blogger on Instagram and let you know what I've learned from it. So this video is designed for those who are at all interested in teaching, either in a traditional setting such as the university or on social media such as Instagram, YouTube, or even TikTok. Now, for those of you who know me, I'm a university professor and I'm also a social media blogger. I began on Instagram nearly 2 years ago. And so trying to juxtapose or coordinate these two very different spheres of education into one person and one profession has been at times tricky. Not the least because in the one sphere, what is considered credible activity might not be considered credible in the other. In other words, my colleagues at university might or have a tendency to look down on people who are merely blogging based on the quality of the content. So there have been obstacles to deal with in negotiating both of these activities. For those in a similar position, I hope that this video will benefit you. So what have I learned related to teaching and pedagogy since I began Instagram 2 years ago? First, I've learned to think globally. As mentioned, I have about 800 or more than 800,000 followers, and they range or span the globe from East Timor to Santiago, Chile, and all areas in between. So as I'm preparing a short lecture, I go live twice a week on Instagram. And as I'm preparing these, I'm thinking about, will these words or phrases or examples be acceptable to the various people groups of the world? So you begin to be more sensitive about your teaching material, and you begin to think about how the audience will receive what you're saying. So there's a heightened sensitivity and more empathy to think about your audience than I ever did when I was just teaching at university. This has been a very important and a very powerful lesson, and one that I've had to learn, unfortunately, through some trials and errors. So what would be considered funny in one area of the world might be considered offensive in another. So I've learned that joking can be very risky if you want to sort of appeal to everyone. And as such, as my sort of common goal is to educate people and not entertain them, I've chosen to avoid some of these pitfalls. Secondly, I've learned to understand what matters most to learners of English. I receive 3 questions more than I do anything else. First, how can I improve my speaking? I want to speak better. Second, where do I start? I'm a beginner and I have no idea how to begin. And thirdly, can you help me with grammar? I don't understand this or that, or I don't even understand if it's important for me to learn. And so if we take these one by one, I think they're very instructive and have enlightened me on how the average person faces average problems, common problems, as they try to understand the language. Speaking is something that I thought was a very natural sort of solution. If you need to speak or you have a problem speaking, you simply speak more. But I quickly found out that many people don't have the resources in their vicinity or in their area or online to actually communicate in English with people, which is why on my Instagram account, which is linked above, you'll find many different language exchanges, group chats where you can organize group meetings, individual language exchanges. There was a business exchange. There's a teen exchange for those younger viewers. But I quickly understood that people were thirsty and very interested in meeting people from other parts of the world to communicate in English with. And it's been a really fruitful experience for hundreds of thousands of people who've benefited from these exchanges. The desire to know how to begin studying English was a very big surprise to me, I must say, but it's the impetus for the new series I have on YouTube, which is the Beginner Series. We started this a few months ago. It's the 10th series or so, the 10th video in the series. We're going to do 100 videos in this series and move you systematically from zero to pre-intermediate. And so this series is a response to the many questions I receive on a daily basis on how to begin studying English. Now I can say to all of those questions, you can do it on my YouTube channel. And finally, the question of grammar. And it surprised me the level of fear that many of the students had and what problems in grammar were most common. And modal verbs and phrasal verbs and articles and these sorts of common features of English were ones that invariably turned up. And so this has been a very enlightening experience for me. The third lesson I've learned the hard way, because it took me a long time to see the obvious, is to address the needs of the students. In other words, to focus on the real needs of the students. When student after student writes me that they have problems with modal verbs, I should probably address modal verbs in an upcoming live or video. And so as obvious as that seems, it wasn't very obvious to me. I listened to the requests, but I didn't fulfill them very quickly. And now I'm much more receptive to the interests, to the questions that the students have that I receive. And so what's the benefit I've learned in my teaching as a whole and also in university? To be more receptive to student questions and take them seriously as a trend that perhaps we need to be addressed. So if many students ask about a common theme, address it directly and address it immediately. Don't wait. Fourth, I've learned to be more professional and more prepared. Now, I'd like to think that I was prepared and professional before my Instagram career, but I have learned to be a little bit more so in each of these areas due to the very nature of how Instagram functions. As mentioned, I go live twice a week, and the viewership is anywhere from 600 to 1,000 people, which means I have 600 to 1,000 learners, but I also have 600 to 1,000 critics. And then, of course, I upload that video later, which allows for more questions. And so I have to get things right. I have to look appropriately or people will be distracted or ask questions. Why is your hair disheveled or your tie or whatever is not on right? So I've learned to pay more attention to how I dress in order not to be a distraction. I've learned to check all of the spellings so that I'm not misspelling slides on my PowerPoint and creating sentences or examples that aren't clear. And I've learned to be very clear with the outcomes, the learning outcomes and methods that I employ in these videos. And all of those three that I've just mentioned require preparation. You can't do this at the last minute if you want to succeed. Fifth, I've learned about the 60-second rule, and I learned it the hard way, and I learned it for a lot longer than 60 seconds. Now, as I began my Instagram blogging, the rules were that you had to, and they still are, you have to create a video within 60 seconds. Now, I thought I knew a lot about some topics, but when you're pressed to communicate that message in 60 seconds or less and make it clear, relevant, and timely with examples, suddenly you realize you're not as prepared as you thought. And so the challenge that I put on myself and that I will also put to you is to articulate your message before you head into the classroom in 60 seconds or less. If you can do that clearly and concisely and coherently, then you'll do it in the classroom. If you stutter and stammer and you're not sure what the main point is of the lesson you're about to give, guess what? Your students will be just as unclear and confused. There is no magic that occurs when you walk across the threshold of that classroom. You don't suddenly become clearer. You are to the degree you prepare. And so I learned that I need to articulate things within 60 seconds very clearly, and I've applied this rule to my university teaching. I ask myself, either in the mirror or under my voice, what is it? What's the main point of this lesson or points? Can I articulate that quickly in a few sentences? If I can't, I'm probably not prepared enough. Finally, and this has been a big revelation, but one that has been oh so helpful, simplify your lessons. I've learned, given the vast number of viewers, the different levels of English that the viewers have, that I have to simplify and make a very clear point in the lesson. Often just one point, but maybe several, but I've learned to simplify it. And the problem most young teachers or ambitious teachers have is they want to tell you everything they know about that subject. That might be great for the teacher, but it often proves disastrous for the learner because they lose the focus. They don't actually know what the point is. And the information is coming so quickly, they can't possibly assimilate all of it. So you need to exercise self-discipline and stay focused on the one singular point or points that you desire to make in that meeting. And know that if students leave with a little bit of knowledge about modal verbs, maybe about possibilities using should, it's much better than telling them everything you know about modal verbs. They will probably leave with little that they're going to remember. They will remember something if you stay focused and take a small aspect of modal verbs, such as possibilities or probability, and just focus on that and one or two of the verbs associated with that. They can remember that. They won't remember everything you talked. Finally, just a few overarching ideas that I think, in conclusion, are worth noting. New experiences enrich your teaching. For me, that was Instagram, and now obviously it's YouTube. If you position yourself or put yourself in a position to teach differently in a new venue, under new circumstances, this will enliven your teaching, and it will enrich your teaching experience because it's different. And it will also help get you out of the doldrums, the lull. If you're finding yourself a little bit bored in teaching, if you want to get out of that sort of rut, then put yourself in new situations and suddenly you're invigorated again. And that's what happened with me. Secondly, by teaching through Instagram and YouTube, I see old topics from new perspectives. And this gives you a more circumspect understanding of the topic. Next, it's okay to be uncomfortable. And it's also okay to fail. It's not probably okay to not try. Everyone's going to fail at something. I've not done very well at TikTok, but I've learned a lot in the process. And being uncomfortable, I feel, is either a telltale sign that you're not prepared, which I hope is not the case, or that it's a new experience that you need to mature in. And that second feeling is oh so positive. Next, not all social media is the same. I've done relatively well on Instagram. I've not done very well on TikTok, and I'm trying to do well on YouTube. So if you comment or like or subscribe to this video and my channel, you will help me in succeeding in that last goal. And finally, perhaps the most important piece of advice I can give to young teachers on social media is this. Be very clear about your goals and outcomes on social media. Understand why you're undertaking this endeavor. Is it to attract a few more students to your school or your private teaching? That's fine, but understand why you're doing it. I've seen many people burn out, become depressed, despondent, because Instagram or YouTube overwhelmed them. It took all of their time and they saw no tangible results from it. Clearly identify your goals, stick to those goals, and you'll have a happy existence on social media. I've been around 2 years publishing posts consistently and going live consistently twice a week for a long, long time. And the reason I'm able to sustain that is not that I'm any different from anyone else, but I have clear and realizable goals that actually are contributing to what I feel is an acceptable outcome. And so there's no reason to be depressed. There's only a reason to press on and be consistent. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope it's helped you. If it has, tell me about it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.